Welcome to episode 3 of our 2023 Morel season. We are midway through our journey from the US-Canada border to the central Yukon Territory in search of wildfire morel mushrooms. If you missed the previous episodes, you can find them here on our channel. We spent the last few days caravanning from the coast, through the mountains and semi-desert of British Columbia, until we passed through the northern Rockies before stopping at Liard Hotsprings for the night. We are nearing the Yukon border, and by the end of the day we should be far into the territory, where we can begin scouting this year's first target wildfires. Before we get back on the road, we've decided to get up early so we can enjoy the natural hot springs once more before the next step of our adventure. Sunny and windy out today, and we're gonna go hit the hot springs one more time and get some more footage with the underwater cam before we continue traveling north, and pretty soon we'll be crossing into the Yukon and then getting into some serious wilderness. Well, our time here at Liard Hot Springs has pretty much fully revitalized all of us, and we're ready to get back on the road and keep driving.
It was amazing.
It's just so hot and dry in this region right now, so there's been so many fires. We've got some buffalo wood bison here. Now, they live all over this stretch of the highway, and they're the largest animal in North America, the wood bison. Slightly different from the plains bison. Larger. So we got a bear right there sniffing. And we got bison right there grazing, and the bear is sniffing the bison. The bears, the bulls,
Bison.
Pulling over on the side of the highway in a seemingly random spot, we've decided to check out one of our old mushroom camps from a prior year. Randy originally harvested a fire here in the year 2004 and used this as a campsite. We returned again for a different fire just north of here in 2016, where we harvested for over a month. It's on a spur of the original Alaska highway. You can see the deep ruts from the original traffic erosion right here. When the highway was completed in 1942 as part of a World War II effort, it was 2,700 kilometers long, but later was corrected to 2,200 kilometers in order to straighten and improve sections of the road. This is one of the forgotten pieces of road where many travelers once passed through. Now it's a heritage Morel campsite as well. Although it's called the Alaska Highway, the majority of the road is located in British Columbia and the Yukon, starting in Dawson Creek, BC, and ending in Delta Junction, Alaska. So we've just stopped in the middle of nowhere on the Alaska Highway. We're about, I would say, an hour or so from the Yukon border. And the reason we've stopped here is because we harvested a burn here 7 years ago, and then prior to that, Randy harvested a burn here over 20 years ago. And both times we used the same camping area. So we're just gonna walk down to our old camp and see what it's looking like now. So you can see this hill behind me here. When we were here last time, there was a lot of dead old pine trees from the prior forest fire, and they were perfect firewoods. They still had all their burnt, their old limbs on them, but no foliage. They were dead. What we were doing is we would back the quad up to the top of this hill here. We would have already felled the tree, and then we would chain the tree with the limbs on it, drive down this hill, and then turn fairly quickly, and it would roll the tree and delimb all of the branches for us, which was awesome. Somebody drove in here. We're standing on a spur to the original Alaska Highway here, and you can see all of the old tire ruts from the 1940s. This road wasn't very well constructed, so check out how bad it was. The concrete's all just broken apart. Our general thought is leave no trace behind, but in these wilderness areas, sometimes a few pieces of wood and like a wood bench like this is okay, you know. So this bench, which we built 7 years ago, is still here. And the reason we left this is we thought we might come back here like we are right now. So it's still comfortable.
Find any dried mushrooms over there? Another bear.
We've just crossed into the Yukon. We're finally in the territories. We're back in BC. We're back in the Yukon.
One more step and you're north of 60.
George Dawson, founder of Dawson City. The first town we have come to after arriving in the Yukon Territory is Watson Lake, a small community of around 800 people.
Take the next right on Yukon 4 West.
At the historic milepost 635 in the center of town is a signpost forest, a unique attraction that immediately catches your eye as you enter the small town. Travelers have been bringing signs of their hometown since 1942 during the construction of the Alaska Highway. Later on, expired license plates began being added to the posts. The sheer volume of locations you see as you wander through the corridors is pretty impressive. Leaving Watson Lake, we again have a choice to make regarding our journey. Do we continue down the well-paved Alaska Highway? Or do we take the more rugged Robert Campbell Highway through the less traveled eastern Yukon? If we continue on the Alaska Highway, we would head west through the capital city of Whitehorse before heading north towards our destination. We've elected to take the Robert Campbell Highway this year. It's slightly more risky at this time in the season, but it'll give us a chance to scout a couple of burns along the way, while also filming some incredible wilderness. We hope it'll be worth the extra effort of driving on a partially unpaved road for the next 600 kilometers. So we are in the absolute middle of nowhere right now, going down a dirt road. This is the Robert Campbell Highway, and this is some seriously beautiful wild country. And oh, look, some better road. As far as you can see is trees and mountains. No clear cuts, very few roads, no mines in sight from here.
No logging.
No logging at all. It's just beautiful, wild realm. Beauty, eh?
Totally beauty. Not very many people. Here we can wild camp, wild forage to our heart's content, and anywhere of all of this, and it goes on and on and on and on. We've been driving for 3 days, and it just goes on and on and on. Canada is frickin' huge, beautiful, and if you have in your heart that you like the wild camp and wild forage, then this needs to be on your bucket list. Near the top. Canada, eh?
We're temporarily pulling off the main highway to scout a small fire down the Nahanni Range Road. If this fire looks promising, we will consider returning here later in the season once it warms up in this area. This wildfire is relatively small at only 1,836 hectares. But if it's good ground, its remoteness may keep away a lot of the usual competition. The fire that we plan to start the season on is in a warmer part of the Yukon, so it will likely start earlier than here. But we'll have this region in the back of our minds over the next few weeks. If this fire does look like it's viable for Morels, then we know there are more fires further down this road. But it's not an area to take lightly. The Nahanni Range Road weaves its way through the Mackenzie Mountains, one of the world's last great mountain range frontiers. The road name refers to the southernmost portion of the mountains, the legendary Nahanni National Park Reserve, which runs through the border of the Northwest Territories and into the Yukon. We've just stopped here in the middle of nowhere on a 2-year-old burn. We're gonna have a look. Now usually we don't find much on burns after the first season, but you know, it's worth taking a look. Every now and then you'll get lucky, but it's usually never the same volume. Nice to walk in a burn though. So you can see all the fireweed has started and everything's had a whole season to regrow. So instead of this being nice open ground for the morels, it's covered in that undergrowth, and that's often what stops them from flourishing. I don't see anything in here. After traveling further down the Robert Campbell Highway, we have come to our second fire of interest along the western side of Francis Lake. This fire is just under 5,900 hectares and has some nice looking topography with lots of small bogs and ponds, which can sometimes be a cue for morel ground. Our satellite scouting of the fire left it on our checklist based on elevation, exposure, and tree variety, but having boots on the ground is always the most important step towards determining if it's worth our time and effort. It's possible to find morels here, but it's pretty dry in this region right now. I'm not sure. I'm gonna try these needles. Too dry. Look at how white the ash is in some of these places. This fire burned way too hot to be what we would consider good for morels, but you still can find them in areas like this if it's rained. Checking this grove of aspen trees because they're often good species to look in. Spruce and aspen mixed here. If these have no morels, you know, the south-facing hill, which is what you want in the early season. If there's no morels here, then we'll probably move on right away. It's too hot and dry, too exposed. They've had this early warm weather here. So, I mean, maybe we could come back on the way out in a few weeks if it gets a bunch of rain. But if it doesn't get rain here, I don't see much producing here unless you're right in along the water, which we could check right there in that bog. See how the ground looks a little different here? There's a bit of moisture in here. Still pretty dry though. That moss is an indicator for us. And then this is the edge of a muskeg bog. It's all burnt away. Don't usually get too many in these muskeg bogs because the soil's still under a foot or two of moss. See, all of these clods are just big chunks of half-burnt sphagnum peat moss. But every now and then you'll get a few along the edge or in these little ripples. And on a burn like this, where that's just too dry, this may be one of the only areas where you'll get a few, but overall not looking so good on this burn. We've come another 10 kilometers down the road on the same burn and it's looking a little bit better here, so we're gonna hop in one more time just to check. There's a little bit of water in the ground. This is looking a bit better. I see fire cups. See, this is actually pretty good looking ground. Right in here is where I'd expect. And it's not too heavily burnt here, so it has some potential. So some giveaways here that could produce: moss, thin coat of needles with this white color, fire cups, fungus, and there's a waterway, so we're right in the transition here. So far the only footprints I've seen are the moose, so I'm not sure if there's people on this burn already, but maybe just us right now. What do you think?
Dry.
Yeah, the lake edge wasn't too dry, but it's not ready. It's just too early. Plus we're just walking back the road. This area looked pretty good, but no morels yet. It did have fire cups just starting, which indicates that the morels will be here within a couple of weeks probably. But we're not going to stay around here, I don't think, unless we see something further down the road that surprises us. We're going to continue moving.
Dry, eh?
Yeah, there's fire cups down in one spot.
Up there too. Yeah, that'll probably come here too. Part burn over here.
What do you want to do?
I'm not liking the bush.
Little tiny permafrost trees.
It looks like the majority of the fire is on the top of the hill where we can't see. You never know what's up there.
Yeah, there was some nice looking ground up there from the road. I do see some aspen meeting spruce and some nice transitions.
The drone while we're here.
Yeah, let's drone. To us like this area had a pretty cold winter and then just a sudden heat wave, so basically no spring. So what's happened is all the snow has melted back and it hasn't given a chance for any of the grasses or dandelions or anything to get going yet. So some of our indicators are there. There's some fire cups, there's some liverwort just starting, but there's no dandelions flowering yet. They're not even creating flowers at all, and that's normally overlapping with morels. The dandelions will be flowering at the beginning of morels. So it's a hard one to get an accurate read on, but it's certainly not ready right now, so we're gonna keep going.
Just went further down the road from Finlayson, and Phil's gonna fly the drone again to take a look at this burn that's over in the distance, trying to find a way over to it and see what it looks like. At the end of the lake there was only around 400 hectares, but it was 400 hectares of mostly needle top, orange needles on the tops of the trees, which is usually quite good for morels. The lake's still totally frozen, so that won't be ready for a while, but I did notice with the drone, the burn is between the lake and a big drainage that goes into the lake, so it could have lots of water and be quite good for how small it is. It's worth keeping in the back of our minds for later in the season. Yeah, I can see a small section of burn down on the left on the other side of this little lake over here, but most of it will be up the hill and around to the right.
You can see a little bit at the top of the hill on our right.
It's doubtful that we'll find mushrooms at the moment with seeing all that ice on the lake, but we can at least get an idea of what the ground looks like for later in the season. Pretty crispy and dry for sure. Well, we'll look around here for a bit and then we'll give you an update. Here's some liverwort right in the moose print where the moose compressed the soil. All the water got pressed together and there's liverwort there. That's a good sign. So this is all thick muskeg here. And the mushrooms won't grow out of this moss, but they might come out of these little fingers here where it's burnt away the moss. It's kind of this crazy scenario where you're in this wilderness area. You might be in an area that hasn't burned in the last 100 years and nobody's ever picked morels here. And you're exposing soil from a foot or two of this moss. So you might be exposing some rare subspecies of morel. That has happened before. So we're always thinking about that as we're looking. Yeah, there's some decent little spots here and there. So there's some nice looking pockets every so often, but in between them all is just this signature look of muskeg, especially from above when you see it with the drone. And it has those long yellow lines of moss and small little trees. And those spots just usually aren't very good. So it removes probably 70% of this burn from being viable. But if the other 20 or 30% is good, then and nobody else is here, it could still be worth looking at. Along this stretch of highway, there are no towns along the road for over 600 kilometers. There is, however, a few small communities such as Ross River, located a little ways off the main highway to the east. Ross boasts a booming community of between 300 and 400 permanent residents, and it's located along the beginning section of the North Canole Road, which we hope to return to later in the season if things go as planned. Randy has spent time harvesting morels in this region as far back as 1990, so we'll be leaning on his experience and expertise if we return here to harvest once the weather warms up in this area.
There goes another little black bear. Number 24. 24 bears so far. We stopped for the night here at the Lappy Canyon Campground, and this is a really nice government campground, which is probably the only one on this entire highway, actually. It's a nice spot. It's about 7:30 p.m. now. We've been driving since early in the morning, so it's about 12 hours on the road today. A little bit easier than the first 2 days, but still a nice long day. And this will give us lots of time to set up our tents, get a nice camp spot for the night, explore this beautiful area, and then in the morning we'll go into the little town of Ross River, get fuel, and by tomorrow we should be in the main burns we've been looking to scout. So we're getting excited now. We're really well into the Yukon at this point. Thanks for following along with us.
Oh, there's ice on it. Looks like the path winds and goes down over there too. Ooh.
Oh. Woo!
I'm gonna warm them all up first again. Tonight we have chicken, carrots, pasta into a nice cheese cream flour sauce.
It's the best we can do while we're on the road, and it's pretty good considering. Chef Randy over here.
What you're missing is the corn.
There you go.
No, not there. Any bird but there.
Nettle tea.
Well, fourth campsite in 4 days.
A lot of dust today. Dust through all my gear, my bedding.
Yeah, it was a dusty road. I don't know about you, but I don't like setting up my tent 4 times in 4 days.
I love it. Love it. Do it forever.
Do it just for the fun of it.
Yeah.
That concludes episode 3 of our 2023 Morel season. If you enjoyed the video, then give us a like and subscribe to our channel, or you can check out our online store linked in the description below. Join us in the next episode where we find a location to set up our camp for the season. Thanks for watching.